The thing that frightens me most about this illness is that we are all potential victims.
This hearing is now closed to the public. Turn off the lights there and turn that damn camera up. Point it up. This meeting of the House Communications Committee, Subcommittee of Technology, Broadcasting, and Television Affairs will come to order. Now I'd like to call on our first witness, the distinguished Dr. Felix Entwistle, Director of the Neanderthal Syndrome Research Project at the National Institution of Mental Health. Dr. Entwistle is accompanied by Stanley Stevens, a subject of research at the institution. You may proceed, Dr. Entwistle.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Kent.
I'd like it if Dr. Entwistle could begin by explaining what the hell that thing is on his patient's head.
Yes, Doctor. What the Sam Hill is that thing?
I'll explain that immediately, Mr. Representative. First, let me just thank you for allowing us to come here today. Now, this contraption, as some people might say, we prefer to refer to it as an apparatus, is a relatively simple harness that suspends this small TV set in front of Mr. Stevens' head. We developed what we call this TV hat for our worst afflicted cases. If Mr. Stevens were not wearing this, he actually couldn't appear here today. Unfortunately, if Mr. Stevens' TV viewing is interrupted for just a few seconds, he becomes paranoid, and he may get out of control. It's, well, if that
just
tells you enough, I'll go to my prepared statement. The Neanderthal Syndrome Research Project was started in 1986. At that time, we had, at the institution, compiled case histories of hundreds of people who had seemingly regressed from the 20th century to a time before language. These people ate with their hands, grunted instead of talking, and often forgot about basic hygiene. At first, we thought they suffered from breakdowns or depression. However, their stories didn't really fit any known profiles for such problems. Then we discovered that invariably these people watched enormous amounts of television. 10, 12, 15 hours a day. It is now 8 years later, and we have no cure to offer the public. We use psychotropic drugs to control victims and to try to wean them from television, but this only makes them manageable. It's a tragedy. In no case I know has a victim of Neanderthal syndrome ever regained their former abilities and returned to a normal life. Now, the idea that Neanderthal syndrome doesn't exist flies in the face of overwhelming facts and hundreds of tragic case histories. The thing that frightens me most about this illness is that we are all potential victims. The people who suffer from this have no common denominator. They are usually very intelligent. They are not all obsessive. They are not all suffering from depression, though some of them are. Depression may indeed lead to Neanderthal syndrome, but that just complicates things. We have millions of Americans who suffer from depression every year. Now, our laboratory has scientific data to support every statement I make here today, and I'll be glad to offer those for the record. Now, in conclusion, I would like to say that television is useful, but it should be considered just a tool that must be used responsibly, in moderation. We don't know enough about the harmful effects of television or how many people are in danger. And so I'm here today to tell you that we desperately need more money for more research. And what we don't need, if you'll pardon my saying so, are cynical skeptics making flip comments out of a blind desire to defend television at all costs.
Yes, well, thank you, Dr. Entwistle, for that very illuminating and disturbing testimony. We'll start with Ms. Schaefer. Do you have any questions?
I do, yes, of course. I'm just so disturbed and stunned by all I've heard today, but I'd like, if I could, to ask Stanley Stevens some questions.
Good luck, Ms. Schaefer. I'm afraid he's not usually very responsive.
Now, Mr. Stevens, I understand you are married, separated from your wife. Mr. Stevens? Hello, Mr. Stevens?
Oh.
Tell us about your wife. Brenda Stevens,
I'm sorry.
is
I'm
it? Do you
afraid
miss her?
The batteries have gone weak. I can take care of it.
He won't become violent, will he?
Here. Stanley, hold on. I'll find them in a moment. Dear, I was sure I had some. Does anybody in the room have 4 AA batteries?
Dr. Entwistle,
Find some batteries to.
Dr. Entwistle, control your patient.
Oh, my God, what have we done? My God!
Stanley! Stay calm!
What is he doing?
Control him.
Chairman, Mr. Chairman,
He's-
Mr. Chairman, call the security.
Here, will you stop that?
Call the police!
Police!
Got to be
Police!
subdued.
Police! Listen here. Don't you get... I've never... Police, get him! Will you stop him? Will you... Would you...
Get rid of him.
I hope he can hold his water. I have to tell you...
Mr. Chairman.
Here.
Mr. Chairman.
Please, shoot him! Order, silence in here.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I feel dreadful. I apologize.
Well,
I must find him, and if you'll excuse me, I apologize. I'm sorry.
well, now just calm down, everyone. Take your seats here. Let's relax.
It was a simple matter of 4 AA batteries.
Yeah, well, the hearing must go on. Mr. Entwistle, you go catch that gorilla and take him back to your lab and lock him up. This hearing will reconvene and is now open to the public again. Our next witness is the distinguished Professor Hedrick Peppermill, teacher, author, and researcher, and frequent guest on many TV talk shows. Professor Peppermill is a media ethicist, and we look forward to hearing from him today.
Excuse me. Pardon me, excuse me, I'm so embarrassed. Thank you, distinguished members. And it's a pleasure to appear before you here today. The first thing I have to say is that Neanderthal syndrome is real. It affects certain types of obsessive personality, just as alcohol and heroin is a threat to certain types of other personalities. Now, the question is, can anyone get Neanderthal syndrome? In the case of young children, I think so, unfortunately. They're all in danger. I believe that anyone who weans their youngsters and toddlers on television, who uses TV as a babysitter, why, this parent is playing with fire. In the case of adults, however, I'm not so sure that everyone is susceptible to Neanderthal. There are millions of people who watch TV excessively, hour after hour every day, and while their intelligence is probably mediocre, and while they live empty, drifting lives of quiet desperation, while most of them can't distinguish between Mozart and Mott the Hoople, they never develop Neanderthal syndrome. The reason for this is simple. Only addictive, obsessive types are capable of the sustained, unbroken concentration on the television tube which is required for a degeneration into Neanderthal syndrome. However, I cannot assure that sometime in the future there will not be a massive collective outbreak of Neanderthal syndrome. I say this because I believe almost all humans do possess some innate potential which we see manifested in severe cases of Neanderthal syndrome. We all have the history of our genetic and cultural evolution within the recesses of our brain. Somehow, in some strange fashion, Neanderthal syndrome wipes away thousands and thousands of years of evolution, leaving behind the shell of a modern man, creating a postmodern television monster, a being unsuitable for life in today's complex society, a barbarian, a primitive, a Neanderthal. There are good things on television, but taken as a whole, the information we send and receive in society today is as memorable as a puddle of muck in a Kmart parking lot. Finally, we are all responsible for Neanderthal syndrome. We live in a confused, material, technological society. We have ignored the inner life of the mind, the spiritual needs of all beings in favor of material goods, and an excessive faith in science and technology. Christianity and the other major religions play second fiddle to the call of the pop icon, instant wealth and fame, scandals in the bazaar, weird, degenerate so-called news and entertainment which pollutes our airwaves. And in conclusion, we can't take this lightly. The obsession with the bazaar has plagued all declining empires. Perhaps these Neanderthals are forewarning us of the fall of the American empire. Congress will never legislate a solution to the problem of Neanderthal, and with all due respect, I must say, I grow weary of your clamoring to the spotlight each time there's a crisis or disease or earthquake or flood or who knows what. You all sit up there with the TV cameras in your face, trying to look more concerned than the next guy, crying out in indignation and self-righteousness. I empathize with the difficult position you find yourselves in, but I have no patience for your self-serving, posturing, and tiresome blabbering.
Mr. Peppermill, please, you are trying the patience of us all.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, but I believe that had to be said. I'm trying to give my testimony here, and you're all asleep. This is taxpayers' money we're burning up here. Okay, now listen, I'll end with this.
Get on with it.
I really do thank you for inviting me to testify, even though you're all asleep. And I encourage you all to look within your hearts, to slow down and contemplate the great truths of history and life, and stop rushing around like a bunch of dirty chickens with your head cut off.
All right,
and furthermore,
Mr. Peppermill, your time is up.
But
I'd stop you even if it weren't.
Oh, okay, Mr. Chairman, I haven't completed all my testimony.
Now we have time for a few questions, if anyone cares to.
Mr. Peppermill, I have a few. First of all, is that your real hair?
Oh, this is a ridiculous question. You're
Your
sleeping
hair is ridiculous, Mr. Peppermill. Now, is it real?
I'm insulted by this line of questioning, Mr. Chairman.
Well, you've insulted all of us. Now answer.
Yes, answer, Mr. Rughead.
We're waiting, Mr. Smarty Pants Rughead.
I cannot, this is an outrage. No, it is not my real
Any
hair.
further questions? Is there any further questions? Well, thanks, Mr. Peppermill. Let that be a lesson to you now. Don't come up here and screw around with us.